So you're joining me this morning for actually the third week of this short course of flower arranging, and it's a special welcome to Natasha and Chris, because this actually is the third week, the last week, the fourth week actually, of the flower arranging class that they signed up to in Canterbury, which was cancelled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you're jumping on the end of their course. So it is the last one, and I'm conscious of the fact I know that Celia is new this time, and Sarah and Caroline P are new this time. So you may think that this is going over your head slightly. So do take the opportunity to ask questions through the chat box as I work, and then towards the end of the class I will take everybody off mute, and then you can ask me questions live. The reason why you're all on mute at the moment is that when you speak, you then become the main view that everyone can see. And because I'm recording the class to send out, I didn't think you really wanted your faces splashed all over everywhere. So that's why I've got you on mute at the moment. I'm not being rude, but use the chat box. And then at the end of the class, I will open it up for discussion, and I can answer your questions in person. And then when I come to send you the recording, if you want to play it back, I'll chop off this chat bit at the beginning and I'll chop off the bit at the end. And it will just be a recording of me showing what we are doing. So by way of introduction, just to recap what we're going to do, I am going to share my screen with you. And this is what we have been talking about in earlier weeks. So it's week 3 of the foam-free flower arranging. So the reason why we are going foam-free, well, perhaps I should tell you actually first of all what it is we've been doing. So we've been doing stuff, basically we've not been using flower foam. So flower foam is a single-use plastic, and it's not doesn't biodegrade, and it isn't very good for the environment, and we're becoming increasingly aware about using less plastics in our lives. So we've actually, you're joining me on week 3, and the things you've missed are, we did an arrangement in a windowsill vase, and we made our own chicken wire. So that was week 1. Week 2 was using an urn style vase and making a ball of chicken wire using conventional chicken wire that you may well use in the garden. Don't worry if you've missed a week, because at the end of today's lesson I will be editing all the videos and I will be able to offer them to you. I'm going to produce a video playbook. And I should say at this point, thank you so much to everybody who's been contributing to my Buy Me a Coffee fund on PayPal. And if you have been paying in, I will be sharing the playbook with you for free. So there is some advantage of doing that. So in terms of eco flower arranging, not using flower foam is a growing trend. We're moving away from using the flower foam, which is single-use plastic. And we want to learn now to be more creative, and how can we arrange flowers without using flower foam? So of course many of you may just do the cut and plonk. You buy flowers and you plonk them in the vase. But this course is all about being slightly more creative than that, and looking at new techniques. Well, actually they're old techniques. We're going back to the old days of techniques and mechanics that we can use to hold our flowers in place. And this week we're going to be using moss. So this supports our flowers and also gives a water source, because although it's not wet, it is slightly damp. And if you've ever had a Christmas door wreath on your front door and it's been made with moss, you will have noticed that your greenery will have stayed fresh for 4 weeks, possibly 6 weeks. And the advantages of the moss is that you can reuse it, it's recyclable, put it on the compost heap, and you are making the mechanics, which is the hardware that you're going to be arranging your flowers in, so you can make it to measure. So you will need to buy a few things if you want to replicate exactly what I'm going to do. So when I have finished the class, I will email you the recording of the class, I'll send you a separate YouTube video, and I'll also send you a shopping list. So what you will need is chicken wire, wire cutters, floristry wires, floristry scissors, and of course some moss. And I will come back to that in a moment. So if I stop sharing my screen with you, the key thing today is chicken wire. So what I have done is I have got, shall I show you what we're going to make? We're going to end up with a little mossed ring like this. And if I put this in my little, I've got a pie dish here, my quiche Lorraine dish. I have measured my dish and to measure with a tape measure the inside edge, and I've made this container. And those of you who are flower arranging stars already will recognise that looks very much like the flower foam you would buy on a wreath form, and that is what we're making today. It's our version of a wreath base that would normally be made out of flower foam. And to start that off, you need a piece of chicken wire. So last week when we made our balls, I was telling you how that it was best to buy this wire, large gauge chicken wire. So this is the chicken wire with the big holes in it. I think these ones are 2.5 centimetres. So I have measured, you will measure the circumference of your dish and you will cut a piece of chicken wire that is as long as the circumference of your dish. We're then going to pack that with moss. But of course, because the holes are quite big, your moss is going to fall through your holes. So what you need to do is to take your piece of chicken wire that you've measured and fold it into thirds. So the top to the middle, just approximately. Taking care you don't scratch yourself. And you can see there that as I folded it into thirds, the gauge or the holes in the wire are getting slightly smaller. So hopefully your moss won't fall out. The next thing to do is to get some moss. So it may be that you're lucky enough that you've got a really mossy garden and you can rake out the moss from the garden. I don't, and of course I've got access to moss because I'm teaching door wreath classes and the moss saves quite well. But again, you can buy this online and it's sphagnum moss, and this is the moss traditionally that you would use in your hanging baskets. So it is available online, and I can send you the link to that. I'm sending the links to Amazon because that's the easiest thing for me to do, but it's just to show you where you can get it from. There was no obligation to buy through Amazon, but sometimes it just helps to see what it is you're looking at before you buy. And what you need to do is you take handfuls of moss. As we're going into summer, I'll say tennis ball sized pieces of moss, and you're going to put it onto your piece of chicken wire and sew it up. And we're going to be making a moss sausage. And to tie that together, you will need a floristry wire. I'm not quite sure you can see that. It doesn't have to be a floristry wire. It could be a piece of fuse wire. It could be a piece of string, but you need something to sew up the edges. So this is quite messy to do, and I don't have a lot of space. So I've done a small YouTube clip for you. So if you just bear with me while I share my screen with you. So hopefully, I'm just going to move you out of the way because you do appear on the recording if I do that. I'm going to go full screen so that you can hear this. So this is what it looks like at the moment. A sausage of moss with the wire edges, which I'm going to bring up to the middle and stitch together. So taking my floristry wire and to use that to grip everything together. So start with a casting on, twist the wire around, making sure it doesn't ping you in the eye, and then use that like a needle and thread, going down the length of your wire. And so it continues. So I'm hoping that's given you a glimpse of what we are going to be doing. When you get to the end of the wire, just wrap it round a few times just to cast off. So you just wrap it round and then we start again. So it's as if you would do, as if you were sewing. We're using this wire as a needle to sew along. So I'm hoping you get the idea there. And then if I skip forward a little bit and get it chicken wire and add some more. So I'm scrunching everything together here just to hold it all in place.
Just compact the wires down a little bit. Everything is really firm. Making sure you've added in extra moss at the ends if you need it. The next thing is to fashion that round into a circle and get it to fit inside.
Now you'll see I'm struggling here.
Dish.
And that's because when I measured my dish,
is to meld those two ends together.
I measured the outside,
cut wires
the inside of your dish
to hold everything in place. And push it down. And then I would go through just around the lip of the container. Just make sure everything's actually inside your dish and not hanging out over the edges.
I'm going to stop that there. Oops, sorry, I'm still talking in the background, so I'm going to close that, do that, and come back to you. Hopefully that's all worked. So that's just what we're doing. So it's this creating this sausage. So you fold your chicken wire up to get rid of the bulk of the wire, but also to close the wires down. Put your mounds of moss along, bring up the two sides, and then that's where that stitching occurs, and you end up with this sausage, a bit like a draft excluder of moss, which were then brought round into the circle and sort of scrunched, compact it a little bit because it'll hold everything together. And you can see here that it is quite you know, it's quite robust. It's not going to go anywhere, and in fact it does look a bit like a door ring. And then with my dish, I did spend a little bit of time just making it fit, but I was talking over myself when I said that when I measured my dish, I went around the edge. I should have gone around the inside, so hence I had too long a sausage to fit into my dish. But you're going to end up with something like this. Now, I haven't specifically wet my moss. I have just, it's been sealed in a bag, so it is damp. So if you wanted to, you know, good care of your flowers, that you could add a little bit of water in. And I have actually, I did a video, the YouTube video for this on Sunday or Saturday afternoon, Sunday, I can't quite remember. And I've just taken the flowers out of it today, Tuesday. So it lasted, you know, the flowers were okay-ish, 3 or 4 days, but I was using older flowers. So I would say that you don't need to soak it so your moss is sodden, but you would want it to be damp to the touch, and you would need to keep an eye on your flowers to see how they were going. So what I'm going to do now is bring in my little turntable here, and I will push you back a tiny bit. So hopefully you can see what I am doing. I'm making a right old mess on my table. I'm just going to plug my microphone back in. Hopefully you can still hear. So bear with me a moment. So the tricky thing is, number one, when you're doing this, it's really, really messy. So I'd probably advise not for you to do it on your kitchen table. If you have got any outside space, it'd be a really good job to do outside. I've now got moss all over my jumper, or to put a dust sheet down, or just to be prepared that you're going to have to sweep up afterwards. And then this is the arranging bit, which is the fun bit, but you'll find that your flowers won't easily fit through the moss. They won't slide in as smoothly as they would if you were using flower foam. So I'm going to be using my scissors to wiggle holes into my foam and then put my flowers and greenery in. You might want to use a cocktail stick or a kebab stick, something like that, but you will need to make holes. So when you're choosing your flowers, it would be a good idea to choose things that had naturally woody stems. So your greenery on the whole would be woody. So you cut that perhaps in the garden, you put it in a bucket of water so it drank. And then next, thinking about your flowers, you want flowers on woody stems. So just guiding your way from not using soft stemmed spring flowers. So if you had in mind you wanted to do a beautiful tulip table centerpiece, you may well find that your tulips are just going to snap because they're too soft. But roses would be great. I've got spray carnations, and actually I've used some chrysanthemums as well, which surprised me that they did hold up. So first of all, you need to think about your greenery. So I have gone into my garden and I've got a little bit of greenery. I have chosen some decorative conifer and some choisia. So that's been sitting in a bucket of water overnight, so it's having a really good drink. And for those of you that are new to flower arranging, we call the florists or flower arrangers would call this conditioning. So it's nothing to do with going to the hairdresser. It means recutting the stems of your greenery and putting them in a bucket of water to rehydrate. So you really are giving them the best start in life. Your flowers and your greenery would really prefer to be left in the garden, but when you bring them indoors, they prefer to be in water. But if you're going to start putting them into flower foam or into moss, you need to make sure they've had a good water source to start with. So the next job is to cut down your greenery to size. So it's up to you how big you do your arrangement. I'm going to keep everything quite tight and compact and perhaps cut everything down to the size of my little finger. So what's that, 4 or 5 centimetres? So I would cut the stem like that. Cutting it at an angle gives you more surface area. It gives you an oval shaped cut instead of just a small circle. But it also means that it's like holding a little dart, and you may find if your stems are particularly robust that you could put them direct into the foam without having to make your guideline. So what you need to remember when you're arranging in this style of container is you've got 3 surfaces to think about. So I've put that in on the side surface. Because my container is see-through and my moss is natural looking, I don't have to spend ages. Normally when you're using flower foam, you spend ages repositioning your material so it covers the flower foam. And it'll be your personal taste whether you want to have everything on this bottom edge pointing down to disguise what we would call the mechanics, the hardware in your arrangement, or whether you like the fact that you can see the moss and the dish, and you've got a pretty dish, why not show it off? So just to be aware of, you've got that side face of your arrangement, you've got a top face of the arrangement, and you've got an inner edge as well. So you need to be thinking, 2 sides and a top as well. And I would normally go through, my advice is to go through and put in your greenery first of all. So this piece here, I've managed to get 2 pieces out, and I've started there, and let's see if I can slide that in. That's perhaps a bit wobbly. It doesn't matter. If I decide at the end, when I have a look that something's a bit too shaggy, I can take it out. I could cut it shorter and reposition it. Now, as you're working on this, you'll be working the other way around. You'll be working so you can see it and looking at it. I'm doing it this way around so you can see what I'm doing. But you can see there it's starting to fill out. I'm just going to do a short, small portion of this coming in on the top next. A piece of green there. Again, the choice here is quite woody. I am just sliding it in as I would normally slide it in as if I was using flower foam. And I'm putting everything in, going into the same direction. So I would normally have gone all the way around the edge to begin with, and then personally I start doing the top edge. I'm not going a piece here, a piece here, a piece there, because my brain finds it too random. And you may find that if you're dotting things around, that it doesn't look balanced. So I'm just trying to make it as easy as I can. So number 1, I would go around the edge first. Number 2, I would go around the top surface. And number 3, if you feel you need a bit of greenery in the middle, I would do the middle section last. And I don't know whether you can tell, but I'm basically putting my materials in approximately 45 degrees. And the choice here is really great because it's quite bushy and it's filling out quite a lot of the moss. So I don't really want the moss to show. So you want to choose things that are really, really bushy. If you've got lots of fine greenery, a cotoneaster, something like that, it's a bit like flower arranging with spaghetti, and you'll need an awful lot of spaghetti to cover up your dish. I've put in the lovely buds here, but you'll need to make use of the leaves, and that's why you want to have everything, include everything into your arrangement, and don't throw anything away until you have finished, because you are bound to be searching in the bin at the end of your creation period. So imagine I've gone all the way around with my choice here. First of all, it won't take me ages, probably take you 10 minutes. It won't take too long, but it's too long for the video. But I will show you the finished YouTube video. I always like to use perhaps 2 or 3 different kinds of greenery, And it's a bit like if you are a gardener, you're planning out your garden and you're thinking about the colour, form and texture of your greeneries. And I have chosen the conifer because, number one, it's the only thing I've got in my garden, but it's a nice feathery contrast to the glossy, leathery leaves of the choisia. So it's just nice to think about things like that. And again, I've got a sort of Christmas tree shaped piece here. I'll be thinking about how many pieces of greenery I can get out of that one section. And coming down. And then what you need to do, you need a nice clean stem, and what that means is you want a piece of stem that's got no leaves on it to go into your flower foam. And I would start again, so don't go too heavily with your coverage with your first bit of greenery, because you'll then go back in and fill in the gaps with your next pieces of greenery. So again, I'm getting them all sort of 45 degrees. You'll be looking more closely to see where your gaps are. But you can see how there it is starting to fill out, and how the yellowness of that greenery is making a lovely contrast with the leathery texture of the choisia as well. So you would go all the way around and do that, and you may well find, and especially at the moment, if you're finding it really hard to go out, I mean, flowers are a real luxury at the moment, that you could make a table arrangement that was just a green table arrangement but had lots of interest, because perhaps you had some buds, but you just, or perhaps even that you put together your different colours and textures of greenery. So of course, not all greenery is green. You may find some lovely sharp, yellowy greens and browns as well. The only thing to be careful of is if you're picking from your garden, it's very early in the season, and unless you're picking evergreen materials, you may find the fresh growth is too floppy at the moment. So even if you cut it and put it in water, it may well droop. So don't be disheartened if you are cropping from your own garden and find things do flop around a bit. That a lot of this is trial and error, and just have a go and see how you get on. So I'm going to ask you to imagine, as I twist that round, it's a lovely haze of greenery. It's a bit like a green polo that is finished. And it may well be, let's say you only had a handful of greenery, and you could decide that if you really like this mossy bit, that you wanted it to be very avant-garde and have just an accent area off to one side. You're the designer, you just make your own rules up. So have a go. And the other thing you could add in, if you've got any pot plants at home, I've got a kalanchoe on my kitchen windowsill. That would be quite nice as a greenery as well. It's quite robust, but it is on quite a soft, juicy stem. So I probably would need to use my scissors to make the guide hole. So imagine that as a green polo. And then we can go in and add in some more flowers. So these flowers, those of you who have done weeks 1 and 2 will recognise these flowers. So again, needs must. I am doing this because these are the only flowers I've got, and I wasn't going to go out to the supermarket to make a special trip to buy flowers. But the whole point of class is it's a learning opportunity. I'm not expecting to make the most fabulous arrangement now, and it's just a matter of having a practice and having a go. So I have got some roses. They're very delicate, only because these roses must be about 2 weeks old now. They are quite fragile. But I cut them short because I've done a mock-up of this, and you'll see a finished article in the YouTube video I'll send you. And you want to do exactly the same thing as you did with the greenery. Recut the stems. And I only had 2 roses in my arrangement. And when you've only got 2 main flowers, so I'm starting off with my rose first of all, because it's my focal flower and my wow flower. It's the flower you're really going to notice. You might find, if you're lucky, you've got a mixed bunch of flowers. You might use gerbras, or perhaps there's a lot of chrysanthemum blooms, the big headed chrysanthemums around at the moment. So this time I'm making a guide hole because my flower is a bit delicate and I don't want to snap it. So you make a guide hole. As you slide the scissors out, I would put your finger in the hole so you can find the hole, and then very gently, but carefully but firmly, or a mixture of those things, is to slide your flower in. And then you can see, as soon as you put a flower in, it looks like a proper flower arrangement. Now, as I say, I've only got 2 of these roses. And my advice to you would be, I wouldn't separate them. I think if you've only got 2 main flowers, I would put them together.
just so that it does really become an accent area. So this rose sort of went vaguely on the top surface of my arrangement. And the next one I might put on the side, and then you really can see it, and it's what your eye is drawn to. So when you're putting this on your coffee table or your dining table, you need to think about where you wanted to see it. So, you know, if you had someone special coming for dinner, not we are, don't know why I said that really. Let's imagine I'm having a posh dinner for 3 at home, and I would perhaps have the roses facing me because I'm going to be the only person that's really going to appreciate them. So I will make a guide hole with my scissors, like so. Find out where that hole is, and then slide my rose in. And you can see it's starting to come over the edge of the container. So even though I'm doing something that's quite compact, just the width of the greenery is making everything slightly bigger. But you can see your eye is certainly going to hit that as being the main focal area. I would then come in with your next lot of flowers, which is the secondary flowers or the sort of in-between sized flowers. And I have got lots of spray carnations that have been cut short. These are a great hard-wearing flower, but the only problem is they have these little node points here that are quite a weak point, and you may find they snap. So I wouldn't cut these too long. You know, I'm going finger to thumb sized. Sometimes you're lucky, you may find you can slide them in. I'm not quite sure. Yes, I can slide that in. So I'm putting one on the edge. I will come back in and put one on that top surface. And then I've got a smaller one to bring that in to the inside edge. And it's all the time you are remembering that your arrangement's got 3 edges. So top edge and just a little bit in the middle as well. So I would then go through and I would pepper my spray carnations all the way around, space them out a little bit and just putting them in as I felt, but all the time thinking top edge middle, top edge middle, top edge middle, and go all the way around. And then if you had more flowers, I've got some different speckled carnations, you would go back in and do the same thing, and you'll see that the more flowers you add, the more vibrant and exciting your arrangement becomes. That's a bit droopy. I'll make that. And I would say as well, if you have got a choice of flowers, thinking about buying something that is small, medium and large, so you get that full range, but also putting in a bit of light colour as well. Now I'm getting the warning coming up that I am running out of time, so what I'm going to do is I will take you off mute, or if you want to unmute yourselves, my mouse isn't working on this mossy tabletop. Oops, I'm on the wrong bit. So I think I can unmute you all.